Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our 1993 Mustang GT convertible. Last time we started stripping it down. This time we're going to throw our fender on here. We're going to completely strip it down and hand it off to the painting gnome so that they can get it all painted up and we can throw it all back together. So let's get started. Our fender's all edged so we can put that on. But before we do, I need to put the washer bottle on because amazingly enough, I remembered this goes on before the fender, or at least it's a lot easier to put on before the fender. Before we put our washer bottle in though, we need to fix our washer hose that's dangling down and going to get caught in the tire. It's supposed to have some tape around these little plastic clips that clip into our frame rail. The tape gave up the fight a long time ago, and when our fender liner was in there, it just sat on top of that. Well, we're not going to have our fender liner in there, and I don't want this thing getting snagged on the tire and ripped back out of the car after I just install it. So we just used some electrical tape, wrapped up our little plastic clips, and shoved them back in the frame rail. So that should hold it out of the way. We can bolt our washer bottle in. It probably would have helped to use a 3/8 socket on a 3/8 bolt instead of a 10mm, but I'm still trying to make this thing metric. So we'll run our washer hose up to the washer bottle and plug it in, and we can connect our electrical connector to the pump. Make sure our clip is in the front, and then we can go ahead and fill it up with some washer fluid. Because I'm opposed to having to work underneath the fender, if I find out this pump doesn't work later, we're going to go ahead and test it now. Amazingly enough, our 30-year-old pump works. We have a Baja Blast drinking fountain. So we're ready to go ahead and try and put our fender on. It was on once before, so it should fit. We'll disconnect the battery so our hood light and our trunk light don't kill it. And we're ready to set our fender up there. It's completely primed. There were some paint issues along with the rest of the car, so rather than having issues come back, we just sanded it all down and primed it all, then edged it so we won't have any rust issues. I don't like doing this job twice, but I'd much rather fit our fender to our door when we were straightening the door and take it back off than have it not be straight. It's not that hard. We're just going to put it right back where it was before, so it shouldn't take much to line it up. Might even get it on the first try. We'll find out. It looks pretty good. Good horsey. Now we can start pulling our deck lid apart so we can get it off of our car. We're going to pull the latch out first so we can get to the wiring harness that's behind it. Now we get to the plug for the power trunk release. When you try to unplug it, you have to make that, I hope they don't break this face, because this is 30-year-old plastic, and it worked. Now we can unscrew our license plate lights that are located in the trunk because they're burned out. At least I hope they are, because they don't work. And we can fish our wires out of here, or at least try. And I'm looking for a plug for our trunk light, and I'm not finding one. And since that wiring harness will not fit through the supports that it's run through, it must not come out this way. I'm guessing that's why Ford designed it, so that it would make you look for where you're actually supposed to take this apart, which is not here. So we're going to head down to the quarter and see if Ford was smart enough to put a plug down there so we could leave the entire harness with our deck lid. I just assumed that they hate mechanics and made my life difficult, but maybe they didn't. Before we can get our quarter trim off of there, we need to pull our rear body panel trim off. It's just held on with a couple Christmas trees and the little T's that hold our cargo net in. And this car actually has a cargo net. Pull our floor liner back. And we can weasel this little quarter piece out of here and see what's behind it. What do you know? They were nice enough to put a plug back there. Actually, two of them. Of course, they were kind of mean when they put a ground wire back there, so we still had to get the socket in there. But our harness is off. We didn't have to take a lot of that stuff off of our deck lid, at least not right now. Now we can unbolt our springs for our trunk. We'll screw the nut back on there, a couple threads, just so it's easy to take off later when we're done using our springs to hold the deck lid up. There's a couple little screws that hold the caps for the hinges. We're going to pull those out of there. At least the ones that haven't fallen out yet. And then we can unbolt our deck lid. Pull the nuts off of there that we just screwed on a couple threads. And pull our springs off. This would be a lot easier if you had a little help, but the supervisor was out chasing squirrels and I don't have any friends. And we'll go set this on a stand. Now we can pull our taillights out. We'll twist the sockets out. Wasn't expecting an incandescent bulb. I thought these were all LEDs. Guess not. The LED plugs just plug into the old sockets. We'll just disconnect them and then pull what would be a normal bulb out, but it's actually a wiring harness that goes to the light. Disconnect all of those. And this last one was giving me a little trouble. I was trying to twist it to unlock it, and they hadn't twisted it in there. It was just sitting in there. Now we can unbolt our taillight. A lot of the Fox body purists don't like these aftermarket LED taillights, so much so that I actually got one viewer that threatened to execute a Grand Am if I don't replace these lights with the factory cheese grater taillights that belong in here. And to that I reply, I don't negotiate with terrorists. But if you guys have an extra set of cheese grater lights laying around and want to send them to me, I'm not opposed to putting them in. But these work just fine, so they're going back in the car. And if you don't like them, buy the car and change them yourself. So we're going to pull our other light out. It's pretty much the same, except for the last two bolts in the quarter. We can't get to those with our impact, so we have to do them caveman method. There's a filler neck in our way. We're going to use our trim clip pliers, make a nice pry bar. They're multi-purpose. If you need a taillight pry bar, those are available in my Amazon store. Now we can pull our quarter moldings off. There's a couple of Phillips screws in the wheel well. Spin those out of there. Then there's a bunch of nuts that go through the rear body panel from the bumper that pinches that molding in there. We can spin those off of there. And for some reason Ford decided they needed to be about 4 inches long and very fine thread, so it takes quite a while. And there's a couple that go through the quarter panel. And then we'll unbolt the top of our bumper, which is also held on by all those little nuts and studs that are 3 feet long. And we'll head over to the other side and get those. This one we got that filler neck in the way, so it's a little bit of a challenge. Especially the ones way down at the bottom of that little quarter extension. I don't know what Ford makes those studs out of or what they coat them with, but for whatever reason, no matter how much dirt and junk get in there and how much salt is on them, they very rarely break. If Ford had made a whole car out of that, it probably wouldn't rust out so bad. There's a couple more on the outside of the bumper that don't go through the quarter. We'll pull those off of there. And then there's a bunch of push pins. So we'll pop those off. And we'll get those other 2 bolts on the other side and pull our bumper off. You can take the bumper off with the quarter extensions, but I need to take them all apart anyway so we can paint it. So I just took it all apart now. I think the only one we don't have to paint is the one that I just dropped on the floor. All the rest of them are either faded or scratched, or they need to be painted for some reason. Now we can go finish taking our deck lid apart. We need to get the trunk lock out. So pull out the little clip that holds it in, one of the 2. Punch the rivet out. There's a little tab on the back of this that isn't playing nice. So we're going to go pull the other lock out of there. And that pulls this bracket out as well. And see if we can get to our tab. Now we're going to use our hammer / fulcrum and just pry it out of there. We'll just straighten out that tab later. Now we can push our lock out. The little rod fell out. We'll put it back in because otherwise we're going to lose it. And now we're going to increase the reliability of this vehicle by 200% by removing the biggest problem with it. There's a couple of pins on the back that allow you to only put the molding on one way, so that the goofballs installing it don't put it on upside down. So you got to work your way around. You can't just slide the spatula through. You don't want to break those tabs off because this goofball will certainly put it on upside down if he doesn't have them. So now we can pull our moldings off the tops of our quarters. They were held on with 9mm nuts because Ford decided that you needed to use every one of your wrenches and sockets in the set. And somebody's been here before. We're missing a few nuts, and the other ones that were on there were on by like half a thread. A couple more bumps and they probably would have fallen off into Narnia, never to be seen again. So we'll take off the few that are on there and try not to drop them down in the quarter. A couple more back here, and we're ready to pull it out of there. You're technically supposed to take the cover off of the hinge, but I don't like doing that, so I'm procrastinating. I'm going to fight it. Managed to get it off of there without breaking any of our studs. And now we're going to pull that cover off. They put butyl tape with a mesh backing over all these nuts and studs to keep it from piercing through the top when the top is up. So you have to pry that out of the way, and it's no longer gooey fun stuff. It's kind of hard as a rock, so you got to kind of break it out of there. It's like an archaeological dig, just to discover the heads of the bolts.
Ford missed.
So apparently close counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and Mustangs. Now we can get to our bolt that holds our hinge on. One of them has a nut on the backside, and the other one just is a self-tapping screw that screws right into the top of the quarter. And there's more of that gooey fun stuff under there that's no longer gooey or fun. So this side we have an extra screw that was still in that. I don't know if they forgot to put the other one in or it just fell out. But we do have a casualty on this side. We got one stud that didn't survive. And I didn't do that. Somebody's been here before. That quarter was painted and they didn't take this molding off. And maybe they started, and when they broke that, they decided they're not taking it off anymore. We got our cap off for our hinge. Unbolt our hinge. We'll spin the bolt a couple times. That'll spin the nut and break some of that gooey fun stuff off. And we'll just kind of scrape it out of there with our pick. I think we got enough of it that we can get our wrench on there. They really loaded it up on this side. Not quite. Got something keeping the wrench from getting all the way on there. There we go. If you're wondering why I took the deck lid off, I have to paint the deck lid off the car because those hinges go over the top of the deck lid and I wouldn't be able to paint underneath them if it's on the car. So we have to take it off. Now we're going to pull the little filler panel out of here. The molding off, held on by, you guessed it, 9mm nuts. And gooey fun stuff. There's a bunch of screws that once belonged to Philip across the back, so we'll spin those out of there. And we'll give that to the painting gnome to put the clear back on it. We need to pull the gasket off that goes underneath those moldings. It's just held on with some rivets, and we're going to do our best to not drill any holes in the top. So far so good, although that first one was a little close. Need to get through far enough to get the heads off of there. Nice when they just fall off. And you can see it has a nice paint ridge on there. We'll take the rest of those rivets out later. So we're going to have to sand that paint ridge off of there and we'll repaint it. The last guys just painted up to it. They didn't do it right. This is why a proper paint job costs a lot more than what you get at Mako. Pull the molding off this side. Now back to easy stuff. We'll pull the fuel filler door off. I guess it's easier to take it off than it is to say. Just a couple screws, hold it on. We had a stowaway. He didn't make it. Now we gotta pull our door apart. Missing our little plug for the back there. And start pulling out all of our screws. bezel out around our handle. And there are 2 bolts behind our grab handle. And 1 more screw in the back I forgot. I'm going to pull the armrest out of the door. It's got those little tabs that don't like to come out of there. You push our switches out. Move them around so we can get the screws out of the back. Ford was too good for clips back in these days. They had to screw the plug in. Now we can pull our door interior trim panel off. No wiggle and pull here. We need to get our taillight pry bar in there and squeeze those clips and pry them off right on the clips. Otherwise you'll tear that cardboard. Somebody's been here before and they managed not to do it yet, so we don't want to be the first guys to destroy it. And there's a couple that they broke. Once we got all those out of there and the one that clipped itself back in, just lift up on the door panel, slide it over the handle, and pull the padding off that adhered itself to the water barrier. Put our window down, check our door locks. Yep, still don't work. Now we can get to our mirror. We're going to unplug it. You just got a pick in there. Pry the plug off. We'll go with the caveman method to get the nut off the rear stud on our mirror, since somebody put our handle in the way. Hopefully we won't drop that nut down in the door, since I don't want to pull the handle out of this side either. And we can get an impact on the front one. And pull our mirror out of the door. Now we can get our belt molding off. There's just 1 Phillips screw in the back. Pull that out of there. And slide it back. Once you get it started, it usually goes. This one's not going. So we'll get our belt molding removal tool, pry it back a little bit. That's all we needed. Slide it back to the slots and lift it out of there. It's like somebody backed into the side of the garage and bent the mirror at one time. And we're going to pull this molding off. It's 2-sided taped on. Somebody's definitely been here before. At least this side still has the studs left in it. I think we're going to 2-sided tape it back on.
Effective.
Sometimes when somebody's been here before, their methods work. So we'll go with them. Now we're going to pull our door molding off of here, because the last guys that painted this door didn't. Just going to slide our spatula across the top. This is the molding with the little aluminum piece inside, so we want to resist the urge to pull out on it. Once you bend that aluminum, it never straightens out. And hopefully I don't have to show you how to take that aluminum strip out of there once you bend it. Well, I think we got through the top. Now we'll work our way through the bottom. The bottom's going to be a little tougher because the sun hasn't gotten through it and eaten it away like it did on the top. And at this point I realized that if you like 2-sided tape, it's probably because you're the guy putting the parts on. And if you don't like 2-sided tape, it's probably because you're the guy that's got to take it off. I don't like 2-sided tape. At least I don't have to worry about scratching the door. We're painting it anyway. And the fishing line trick doesn't really work on this because this 2-sided tape is so old, it's hard and actually tears the fishing line up. So you got to use welding wire or windshield wire, but then you risk cutting through the molding. So we're going to avoid that. We'll just use our spatula. Besides, I'm sure the safety experts are losing their mind now, so I'm pulling it towards me. And not wearing any gloves. A little bit at the end. We got most of our molding off. A little bit left in the front. We don't want to just let that molding hang on its own weight, so we're going to kind of push it up against the side of the car with our shoulder, and then we have both of our hands free to finish cutting through the rest of that tape. And the molding's off, but the fun isn't over, because we still have to take off what's left of that two-sided tape off with our wheel on both the molding and the door, and then retape it. We'll do that later. We're going to pull our door lock out of here, and we're going to use our most valuable tool today, the taillight pry bar. It's now a lock pry bar. And on top of all the uses we used it for today, like any tool, it's also a hammer. We'll reach in with a pick and disconnect the rod from the back of our lock, and we're done. So that's about as far as we can go on our Mustang for right now. We'll pull the door handles off later, they're riveted on, but it's kind of hard to get in and out when we don't have door handles. So I'm going to leave those on until he's ready to pull it in the booth and paint it up. Then we'll sand under there, paint it all. But until the painting gnome paints it black for us, and we'll sand it all down and then paints it black, I'm done. So I will see you guys when it's all black. Thanks for watching.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna